Deep inside a crowded, chaotic jungle market, a chimp finds an ordinary gray rock. He declares it valuable, selling it for $100. This initial transaction is known as the displacement phase. An item that has absolutely no intrinsic value is suddenly given an arbitrary baseline price, simply because two parties agreed to the trade. This chart tracks the rock's price trajectory from that starting point. It jumps from $100 to $500 when a gorilla buys it, and then surges to $1,000 the very next day when it's sold to a lemur. The rock doesn't produce fruit, or provide shelter, or generate any actual yield. The price is climbing purely because of localized hype and rapid upward price momentum. Our monkey protagonist is watching all of this happen from the sidelines. He is clutching his wallet, sweating, and completely gripped by the fear of missing out. His peers are doubling and tripling their net worths overnight on paper, doing absolutely no work to earn it. Watching that happen creates an immense, almost physical psychological pressure to join the crowd. Logic dictates that a plain gray stone isn't worth $1,000. But when an entire market is screaming about a guaranteed ticket to wealth, the anxiety of being left behind starts to drown out that logic. Objective analysis disappears. At this late stage in the cycle, collective emotional panic and the desire for easy money completely replace rational thought as the primary driver of the market. The monkey breaks. Violently surrendering his rationality, he takes his entire life savings, $5,000, shoves it into the lemur's paws, and takes the rock. The cognitive dissonance here is massive. Deep down, the buyer objectively knows this asset is completely useless and heavily overvalued. That exact moment where the transaction achieves maximum detachment from intrinsic reality represents the absolute peak of a market bubble. This trade represents a high-stakes psychological gamble, detached from any concept of traditional investing. He makes this gamble because his decision is being driven by a specific behavioral concept, the greater fool theory. This flowchart maps the central logic of the theory. A buyer willingly acts as a fool by paying an absurd price today, banking entirely on the belief that an even greater fool will come along tomorrow and pay $10,000 for it. Zooming out reveals the fatal flaw. This model requires a literal infinite supply of new, increasingly irrational buyers. Jungle markets and real-world economies are strictly finite. Because there is a limited amount of capital, mathematical reality dictates that this chain of willing buyers must inevitably exhaust itself. Depending on an endless supply of greater fools is a structural trap. It carries a guaranteed mathematical expiration date. One morning, the Weezing stops. The monkey stands waiting for his $10,000, but the hype has died, and the pool of available buyers has completely vanished. The market enters a liquidity crisis. It doesn't matter what the digital price tag claimed yesterday. The rock cannot be converted back into cash at any price today, because the actual demand is exactly zero. Desperation sets in. The trapped seller frantically slashes his asking price from $5,000 to $1,000 to $10, trying to find a single taker. The bubble bursts. The glowing heat of the asset crusts over and fractures into useless dust right in his hands. The moment the collective belief in the greater fool evaporates, prices instantly free-fall back to their true intrinsic value, which is zero. When a crash like this happens, there is a common economic misconception that the money simply disappeared into thin air. The forensic reality of the wealth transfer is much simpler. The actual cash moved legally from the desperate late buyers directly into the pockets of the early sellers. The monkey is left with what the market calls holding the bag. It is the ultimate penalty for being the final participant in a zero-sum speculative mania. Successfully navigating a market requires distinguishing between genuine value investment and psychological hype gambling. Buy value, not hype. Beware, participating in a market bubble is a systemic game of hot potato, where the final player is mathematically guaranteed to lose everything.